Welcome. This is Mr. Harold, and I'm here today to talk about how to write a good introduction. For the next 3 videos, I'm going to be walking you through the introduction, the body paragraph, and the conclusion, and go through all of the key elements that they should have. Now to start off, let me walk you through the key. I made this key based on a paper that a student did last year. I went through her paper and I color-coded it and found all of the different elements that she had that you should have in your paper. So here it is. The first thing is a bold generic idea. Now you're only going to use this in the introduction, but when you start your paper, you want to have something that can draw their attention, something beyond your story. The second thing, also in the introduction, is the historical context. Go from the broad general idea and then bring the reader into the story itself. For example, in this first paper, you're writing about Beowulf, so you're going to want to give some historical background on the Anglo-Saxons. Makes sense. Now, after you do that in the introduction, you need some plot information. Now, the plot information is going to come in the introduction, and it's also going to come in the body paragraphs as well. Even though I have read the story, and even though you have read the story, your reader might not have read it recently, or they might not have read it at all. You should be able to present just enough plot information that they understand what you're saying, but not too much that you're rehashing the plot or telling the entire story to them. Additionally, throughout the papers, there's things called transitions. You need to be able to go from one of these steps to another. And then finally, when we get into the body paragraphs, we're not going to talk about that in this video, you want to include quotes or specifics, and most importantly, and this is why it's in yellow, you need to include explanations. If you don't have an explanation, you don't have a very good paper. So let me walk you through her introduction just to show you how she was able to use all of these different elements. Now, I'm not going to read the paper to you. I would imagine you can either pause this video and read it yourself, or if you take a look below, I've actually included a link to this document that I'm using, so you can read it on your own. But let's take a look here. Now, this is the first part of her introduction, and you'll notice that I color-coded the whole thing. So why don't you take a second now, and pause this video, or bring up the link, and actually read through it. Okay, so in the beginning you notice that she starts off very generally. She talks about society as a whole evolving throughout time. She talks about cultures in general. After 2 sentences there, she moves on and talks about the Anglo-Saxons specifically, and how the Anglo-Saxons were the dominant tribe in the area, talks about the year that they existed, and a few traits, including the fact that we don't know much about them. Now again, I know that, and you know that, but when you write these papers, you need to assume that the reader might not be instantly familiar with it. Don't assume that just because it's in your head or my head that everybody understands. Now, after 2 sentences of background, she shifts into Beowulf itself. She starts talking about the plot of Beowulf. Here we have a good 2 or 3 sentences that specifically go through the plot of this story. Once again, even though it might seem redundant, it's important to get these details in there. It makes much more sense, it's organized, and it's clear as to what you're actually talking about. So take a look here. They talk about how the plot is not very deep, how Beowulf battles with monsters, how Beowulf shows different qualities, and how Beowulf is rewarded. So very general, doesn't even get into Grendel's mother or the dragon. Now the final part of the introduction is here, and it starts on this page, the word through, and then we move on to this. Through the many battles and triumphs of Beowulf, the author lays clues as to how the Anglo-Saxons survived as a civilization. This is a transition. She's shifting from the plot of Beowulf into what her thesis is going to be. Finally, she ends with a thesis statement. Beowulf depicts the Anglo-Saxon culture through the fates, values, and rituals of the characters. So if we take a look at this entire thing, we have at least 10 sentences or so, and they all do slightly different things. We have a general intro, some historical background, some plot background, a transition, and then the thesis statement. When you write yours, you want to be doing these same things. Now, you can use this as a model. Obviously, don't plagiarize it, but use this as a model when you write your own. Come up with your own intro. Rewrite your own historical data. Use this to model your Beowulf background, and then insert your own thesis with the transition. I hope that helped give you an idea as to what an introduction should look like. If you want to find out more about body paragraphs, take a look at the second video. See you there.